Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another founder-led sales stories where founders who have successfully navigated their founder-led selling journey share with those who are still in the middle of it. I'm Pete Kazanji, author of Founding Sales, the Startup Sales Handbook, and your host. Today we have my friend Shannon Goggin, CEO and founder of Noyo, the benefits infrastructure company, revolutionizing employee benefits data exchange. On the back of Shannon's founder-led sales motion, she's built Noyo into a Series B company, having raised more than $50 million from blue chip investors like Norwest Ventures, all while powering benefits APIs for industry leaders like Rippling and Gusto, and closing enterprise deals worth up to $1 million with major insurance carriers like UnitedHealthcare. I'm particularly excited to have Shannon here today because her sales motion is uniquely challenging. She's built a two-sided marketplace connecting HR software platforms with insurance giants, requiring completely different selling approaches for each side. My biggest takeaways from our conversation were Shannon's brilliant solution to the cold start marketplace problem with a simple form library MVP, how she overcame her initial fear of sales to close six-figure enterprise deals, and the counterintuitive discovery that adding advisory services accelerated their software sales. Shannon also shares her biggest regret, waiting too long to create smaller entry points that would have accelerated their land and expand strategy. So with that, here's Shannon. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us for another episode of Founder Led Sales Stories, where founders who have successfully navigated their founder led sales journey share with those who are right in the middle of it. I'm Pete Kazanji, author of Founding Sales, Startup Sales Handbook, and your host. Today, we have my good friend Shannon Goggin, CEO and founder of Noyo. I am particularly excited to have Shannon here today to share with us mainly because her sales motion is so exciting. Specifically, thanks to the nature of Noyo's technology. So they have an extremely high average selling price. Not only that, they have a two-sided marketplace sales motion also. So balancing supply and demand acquisition sales motions as well. So both of those make for a very spicy sales motion. I'm excited to talk about it. So Shannon, it's great to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Pete.
I'm pumped. So maybe you can kind of tell folks a little bit about the problem that the company solves, what the kind of organization types are that care and have that problem that you guys solve, and who the humans are in the organization that are responsible for solving that of course, as a result, you sell to.
Sure. Noyo we work in the employee benefit space, and we're an infrastructure company that handles data exchange between all of the different entities that go into making benefits work for companies. So employee benefits, of course, being when you join a company or take a job, you're getting hopefully your health insurance, you're getting dental and life insurance and 401ks and fertility benefits. And there's a whole
All the
host of
things,
things, all
all
the
the things.
things, hopefully, that companies will offer in their benefits package. And of course, there's a lot of different insurance companies and benefits vendors that provide those services. There are payroll systems that need to know what your benefits package looks like. There's HR software that needs to know and help facilitate people's enrolling and understanding what those benefits are. There are lots of different people who help make the employee benefits package come together, brokers, and a whole host of other players in this ecosystem. And historically, it's been very, no surprise, very manual, lots of people typing and
Lots,
downloading
lots of
files.
lots of faxes, lots of PDFs, lots of typing, et cetera. Sounds super efficient.
That's right. It's a benefits and insurance. It's famously efficient. So Noyo is software to solve that problem. We make data exchange between all those different systems really easy. And in the process, we make it a lot more efficient. We make it a lot more affordable to do this kind of work. And we give people a lot better visibility into what's actually going on so that they can, so people can have better access to their benefits with fewer headaches.
So it sounds like there's two audiences there who care about Noyo, the the software side and the benefits side.
That's right. We sell to both of them. We serve both. As you mentioned, we have sort of a two-sided network dynamic, and over time it becomes three, four, eight sides to the network. But the simple version is on one side, we sell to HR software, payroll software companies that are actually employee and employer facing. So these are companies like Rippling and Gusto. For this audience, startup founders, that's where you go as an employee to sign up for your benefits and see what your benefits are and figure out what's going on. And so on one side of our network, those are our customers, and they use our API driven foundation to actually connect to all the different insurance companies, all the different benefits vendors on the other side. And we handle we get people enrolled in insurance. We make changes. We read data back from the insurance companies and provide that infrastructure under the hood. And then on the other side, we sell to the insurance companies and the benefit vendors and help them facilitate all of their partnerships and distribution that they need to do. So very different audiences. On the
Imagine.
HR payroll side, it tends to be more product
Right.
people, operational leaders,
It's part of the product.
very core part of the product. And it's always a build versus buy decision for them. And then on the insurance company side, it actually tends to be more of their distribution team, people who are responsible for selling insurance, because they need to make sure that they are competitive in the market and compatible with the tools that their customers are using.
Got it. And so these probably, not only are there different personas involved and sounds like different value propositions to a certain extent, it also sounds like there would probably be different sales sizes associated with these as well, because I would imagine the number of product organizations that could embed this ends up being fairly substantial, I suppose. And then when I think of healthcare, like insurance companies, I think of UnitedHealthcare and Aetna, and then and Kaiser, and then I'm out of them, and because they're very large. And so I would imagine that those deals are probably quite large, quite complicated, high ASP, like bajillions of stakeholders, whereas the software ones probably maybe not as big, and also maybe a fewer number of stakeholders. Does that end up being the case, or are they both Bearcats?
It's on the insurance. Well, I would say actually on both sides of the marketplace, there are some big giant ones that have a huge amount of concentration. So UnitedHealthcare, Aetna, as you mentioned, those are very large insurance companies. They have a lot of customers, but there are about 1,000 plus insurance and benefits vendors out there, and it's
Right.
growing. The big ones have the bulk of the
Ends up being like
volume.
power law. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then what did you do? Maybe you can kind of share with folks what you did before starting Noyo.
How did we pick this? Very specific problem to solve. I was a product manager at Zenefits. And as my two co-founders, three of us that started the company, we all worked at Zenefits together, tackling this problem. So we worked on Zenefits BenAdmin system. BenAdmin is the lingo for the part of the software that administers benefits for companies. So how does an employee...
You built Zenefits internal Noyo.
We did. That's right. And very expensive to do, very hard. Zenefits so I worked at Zenefits from 2014 to 2017. Zenefits was very much a leader in pushing technology and in driving how you could improve HR software experiences for small businesses in particular, and grew very quickly and had a huge amount of interest and demand. And so we were trying to match basically, can we actually bring this vision of a really simple benefits experience for our employees to life? And then, of course, realizing and learning pretty quickly that vision is only possible if you can get the right information from the insurance companies to and from. And so we were limited by what our partners could do. We at Zenefits, we were a broker at the time. Zenefits is no longer a broker, but at the time, Zenefits was a broker. And so we were selling insurance, and then we were building software to facilitate the experience. Behind the scenes, we had to go out and build relationships with hundreds of insurance companies and figure out operational processes to actually get people signed up for the coverage that we sold them. As every broker did, you use a combination of people and, data flat file. There's some old data exchange flat files that you can use. It was, I think Zenefits had at one point 500 people on our operations team because we had so much business, but then you need to staff appropriately to handle all of that business. And so for us, the insight was, one, we learned enough to figure out where we could use software pretty effectively. And we had a pretty good idea about the need and the early insight that we had, that it wasn't just benefits who needed this. It was everybody. Like the whole system is running on this, a lot of technical debt, as you could say.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and so this is a fairly common entrepreneurial design pattern where you work on an internal tool within an organization, solving a very substantial problem that that is business critical, mission critical for that organization, and then hypothesize that it could generalize to other folks in the market. And usually the good news is that you can validate that it works internally and it like hits the relevant business metrics internally. Like I imagine you guys probably worked on a bunch of stuff to reduce that number of 500 people, or alternatively make it such that that number of 500 people didn't go to like 1,000 people as you added more and more customers. But then the important thing is that you have to validate that folks outside of your organization also believe that this is a problem and not just like magically bespoke to the organization that you're currently in, and that it's an important problem, and that the way that they're solving it right now is unsatisfactory. So it was essentially as validation. So how did you go about validating that in the market post benefits?
I made a lot of phone calls. I was lucky to build some great and very relevant relationships from my time at Zenefits, of course. And so I had relationships with insurance companies because of course, we'd worked with them as partners. And in many cases, because Zenefits was doing such interesting things and was quite unusual for the industry, a lot of leaders from different insurance companies would come and visit. And
Uh,
so we would give them a tour of the office and we would sit down and we would kind of talk through some of the things we were doing, get them comfortable with our approach, but then also get them excited about the potential. Obviously, the growth potential was huge. We were a very quickly growing broker and distribution channel for them. And then we were able to make some asks of, hey, if we could, I've one example was we were calling one of the insurance company's support lines so frequently because we needed to confirm people's member IDs so they could go to the doctor. So we were building a mobile app where you could, instead of waiting for your insurance card to come in the mail, you could open up your mobile app and it would say, Shannon, gold plan, here's your member ID, you go to the doctor. Sounds simple, but the insurance companies don't make that number available digitally. And so we started calling and saying, hey, we got a couple we're the broker, we got a couple member IDs to confirm. Can you give us the member IDs for these people? But the number of people that we were asking about grew so long. And I suspect that this is where well-intentioned incentives can become misaligned. I suspect that the insurance company had some internal support metrics, which is, hey, you need to be closing support calls and handling the issue within X number of minutes or X time. But we were calling with a list of like 400 people and the call would take a long time. And so they instituted a cap that said, we will only do one member ID per call. And so then we would just pick up.
Hi, it's me again.
It's me again. I got one more. So we would sit down with them and have some conversations of, hey, if you don't want us to make 400 calls, maybe you could just give a spreadsheet to us once a week. That would help a ton. And it would be, very partnership based, and trying to solve problems. But anyway, so I knew some people at the insurance companies. And so when I left Zenefits and was kicking the tires on Noyo to really validate, I was calling them to also ask like, hey, if we had something like this, what do you think? And the most common response, I would say, those calls were really helpful for me in finding early champions and early believers. I made some stronger relationships through that process, finding the people who said, I think this is a really great idea. It's going to be hard, but I believe it should happen. And they would
Right.
offer to help us. Those people became really powerful for me. And I still call on them to this day, those specific people that I was calling that summer in 2017.
True believers.
The true believers,
True
which
believers.
I didn't appreciate at the time how much I needed to know that those people existed. They weren't just people who knew me and believed in me. They actually had no reason to care, but they believed. And so that was really helpful.
Yeah, they truly believe that this ought to be a better way, or like ought to be the way of the world. And as a result, like they cared about this problem and remediating that problem, whether it's for economic reasons or personal desire reasons or what have you. And then they saw that you were somebody who could potentially make that vision a reality. It's kind of like the inverse of, hey, I really like this Shannon lady. She's super cool and super smart. Yeah, like I'll give her the time of day about this problem. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work out, right? Like it needs to be commercially like really important, and people need to believe that it ought to be the thing in the world. And so this is oftentimes when you're doing your customer research, identifying those folks, even out of the subset, say, a third of your conversations, people will tell you, yes, this is definitely something I'd like to see, but maybe only a third of that third would actually be the ones who are vehement, jump across the conference room table and say, yes, I want this to happen. And so keeping track of those folks, whether that's like throwing them in a customer advisory board, or probably the minimum viable version of that is just like establishing a texting relationship and kind of keeping them up to date on things that you're doing. And kind of the more aggressive version of that might be getting them as an advisor or an investor or what have you, can all be really powerful. Excellent. So that's fabulous feedback. So okay, do the validation. Wonderful. A lot of people saying that this is something that that they really want to see, and then a substantial number of true believers who say, hey, like this is going to be a heavy lift, but we're in it to win it with you. So who ended up being your first customers or customer? Maybe you can kind of take us through what that journey looked like.
Yeah, the biggest piece of feedback from that journey that you mapped out of like people who believe it, true believers want it to happen. And then the next kind of filtering was the most common feedback was this is a really big problem. And unfortunately, it's just impossible to solve.
Yeah,
And that
sweet.
was a lot of feedback. And then, there were a lot of those people who kind of made it through those filters that you just described were the ones who said, it's going to be hard, but it's not impossible. And we'll like brainstorm with you and kind of help find the cracks through. Our first customer, so I talked about calling a lot of people on the insurance side, but I was also talking to people on the software side, the ben
Software
admin,
side.
the HR, the innovator side, the people who really wanted to push forward. And so one of those people was Parker Conrad, founder of Rippling. He also founder of Zenefits. And so I had worked for him, and he knows this problem as well as anyone. So he, of course, was one of my first calls to get his take on the idea. And he gave us really honest feedback, guidance of like the parts that really mattered to him, the parts that mattered for Rippling. And they were our first customer. So this was 2017. They were, I don't remember exactly how many. We went over to their office, I think maybe 20 people, 30 people, mostly engineers getting Rippling off the ground. And it was fun. And so the first version of our product, the thing that we were selling was an API that you could use to get someone enrolled in insurance. So if someone signed up for coverage in their ben admin through Rippling, that Rippling could send us an API call and say, please enroll Pete in coverage. And we would go and make that happen. To do that, this is the cold start problem of a network, you need someone on both sides. And so at the beginning, we didn't have any insurance companies that we could connect with. I mean, at the very beginning, we didn't even have the API built yet. And so the first product that we sold was, if you can't enroll someone through an API, you are probably enrolling them with a PDF. You're filling out paperwork and you're emailing it to someone. And so we downloaded all the paperwork and we mapped it, tagged it. Where does the first name go? Where does the middle initial go? Where does the social security number go? That was the first product that we sold to Rippling. So they licensed we called it our forms library, and they could use that to create, auto generate the paperwork and then send that off. That process of downloading all that paperwork was also essential for us in defining the API, because it was important to have a universal API that didn't change from UnitedHealthcare to Anthem to Aetna to Kaiser. And so we got hundreds of sign me up for insurance forms and remove me from insurance forms and add my baby forms. And we mapped all the data elements. And then we were able to find the common patterns and use that to inform our universal API that we started with.
I love that. One, what a phenomenal example of two things that don't scale. Two, like obviously a kind of a very cool stepwise product motion there, where like the original thing that you were selling, and maybe not selling for wild amounts of money, but selling to Rippling in this case, was something that doesn't look like software on its face, but also was a required intermediary or kind of like step on the way to the final vision, where I think a lot of times what founders will do is because they have this vision of this thing, the eventual end state in mind, they'll resist commercializing until they get to this thing up here, which can be very fraught because you're avoiding actual commercial validation, which is really where the rubber hits the road as to, okay, they may say that they value this, but until they actually pony up and pay, you actually don't know that they value this or not. And so it's what you're describing right there is maybe a variant of this is kind of like selling vaporware and then going and then building it, which because maybe kind of post AI code gen is something that's like a little bit faster than it used to be five years ago. But importantly, in this case, like selling something that is truly a minimum viable product, but not giving it away and not saying, hey, but actually validating that this will hit a business metric in a very important way. Hey, and I imagine in Rippling's case, it was, hey, guess what? You won't have to instantiate a Ben admin team, or at least like your current one Ben admin person will not have to become 20 in short order because we have this form library or what have you. And by the way,
Right.
we're on our way to this API version as well.
Totally. And it was very open. Like they knew we were building the form library because we were trying to get to the API. They wanted it to happen too. And so it was exactly what you described. It was far less than it would have cost them to staff a person to do it in-house. And then that was going to kind of help get them on the way. And then what we did from there was we had been talking to insurance companies and trying to sign them up. And the compelling reason to buy would be, well, if we work with you on this, who's on the other side that's going to use it? And we were able to, with that, say, actually, we do have a customer and it's a customer that you care about and you might be trying to set up some deals with anyway. And so when we launched our API, when we got to the point of launch the API with live data exchange flowing between insurance companies and Ben admins, we started with 2 on each side. And it was the 2 Ben admins who were both doing business with 2 insurance companies. And so each one got 2 on the other side, which helped make it. That's how we got into market.
Yeah. And I think there's another really cool thing about the form library MVP as well there, insofar as you actually obviated the need for the providers to be customers in the case of the form library, because you just downloaded all the files from them and then modeled them such that Rippling could pre-gen these forms for any of the providers, because Noyo had gone and tagged them all up and what have you. And so they had something that was useful across all these folks as a first step before the true API version, which of course is like dramatically more magical than what we're describing right here, which would then be good for 1 provider or 2 providers, eventually 40 providers or what have you. And I think that you're using an existing protocol like email and PDF as a mechanism to bootstrap that. And so now all of a sudden, Rippling could sign up because they could get utility even short of like solving that cold start problem. It essentially was like a half cold start, right? Getting to the warm part of the cold start.
Yeah.
What a cool kind of like tactic for.
You're taking me back to summer of 2017 at my kitchen table with a big monitor and Adobe Photoshop.
Like
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
tagging fields. Got your like grandma glasses on your nose. I
Exactly.
love it. And I think hopefully at some point we'll have another guest on that has like maybe a pure marketplace versus like a technology kind of like middleware marketplace. But solving the cold start problem kind of sucks, right? In marketplace, I think the cool thing about marketplaces is like once they get spinning, there's lots of momentum, but the downside associated with them is that it takes a hot second to get them ramped up. And so that kind of intermediary step that you describe right there is a really kind of cool thing, a really cool way of approaching that. Obviously, Lenny Rachitsky does a bunch of writing on these sort of things around like marketplaces, kind of how to solve the different problems. Okay, but like let's talk about the selling part of this, a cool kind of product intermediary step there. Most founders don't have a background in sales. You were a product manager at Zenefits, and I think you were a consultant before that, if I
I
recall
was,
correctly.
yeah, management consultants.
So in both scenarios, not really selling. Selling engineers on why they should deliver their tickets faster,
It's
and
so
then
different.
selling the managing director or whatever on why you should be staffed on this project versus another project, as a managing
Yeah.
consultant. Just a little bit different. So I would imagine maybe there was, some hesitancy, maybe some fear around sales, what have you. Did you have a fear of sales? How did you surmount that, if that was
I
the
had a
case?
huge fear of sales. Yeah,
Huge.
huge fear of sales. I'm a perfectionist. I do the work. I like to be prepared for every question. I think how that helps is I tend to be viewed as a credible expert because I don't make things up. The downside is, yeah, it took a little longer than I wanted it to pick up the phone and make the call.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, looking back, the things that I thought I was selling, I remember you get off a call with a client. I'll talk to my co-founders. Oh, they're really interested. I'm gonna put together a proposal. And I look back now, I'm like, they weren't gonna buy. They were doing a favor by talking to me, and it was invaluable. But like, they were not close to buying. But the big thing I had to get comfortable with and just push myself to do was just to make the call. Like, even if it was not like I would overthink what was going in the email, but really the email should be one line, two lines. Will you talk to me about this thing, and send, and not expect every single email to be returned. That stuff was, it sounds so simple, and you live and breathe this and coach people on this all the time, but it was
Oh, yeah.
psychologically
I
real.
think what ends up happening there, I think I talked about this a little bit in founding sales, but where this oftentimes comes from a lot of founders come from a product management, maybe a management consulting background. Both of those, usually the work that you're doing is you're doing a low volume of high criticality work, right? Like an example of that would be like a PRD that has to be really good, and like maybe you spend like multiple days on it or what have you. Whereas, or in the case of consulting, presumably that would be something like there already is a consulting engagement. It has been sold.
Okay.
Did the research. We now need to prepare it and then present it. And because these things kind of feel similar to like maybe writing a follow-up email to a call or giving a presentation or a demo or what have you, you think that then maps over. The problem, of course, being that in the case of in sales, probably 70% or 80% of those conversations are not going to actually pencil out. And so if you put the total level of effort into every single one that you would for a fait accompli PRD or client presentation or what have you in management consulting, the level of effort to expected return is never going to pencil out. Now, obviously, there's ways that we can make that more efficient. So we like qualify higher in the funnel. We make sure that we're engaging folks that have the need that we solve based on external signifiers or what have you. We kind of qualify in form fills. We maybe qualify via qualification questions via email, maybe even discovery at the beginning of the call in order to kind of filter in or out. But still, it's going to be at best a 20 like a 50-50 crapshoot, but usually it's actually going to be like 20% of the time you're going to have a successful outcome. And so I think that like changing your mindset to the fact that you're going to take a lot of shots that end up actually not panning out, and as such you can't invest in every single shot as if it was a PRD or a client presentation. A management consulting client presentation can be quite a mindset shift there.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
do have to. I think you still have to hold the balance of you don't know which of this. You don't know which of your 100 shots are going to be the ones that work. So you have to treat every one of them with. You have to put your best foot forward in every one without, yeah, without going all the way down.
In like a economically efficient or time
Right.
efficient fashion. I mean, it's like, yeah, the Pareto optimal amount of like shine for the fact that this actually may not pencil out. Cool. That's a good lesson there. What were some of the best resources that helped you on kind of your founder led sales journey?
Founding sales, of course, and and you specifically talking with me about this stuff, and founding sales, I also think, I don't know how many people know this, but when you started it, it was in Google Docs before you published it to a book format. You were writing
That's
chapters and sharing them with people. And then,
that's right.
yeah, so I was reading the Google Docs
On
and
demand,
on demand before
just in
I
time.
watched it. Yes, it was filling up in front of my eyes. Um, but no, but genuinely, that was really helpful because it was the basics. I had no idea what is product marketing? You asked me once, what are you using for your transactional emails? I didn't even know what that meant. And so I had to like look it up and figure like, oh, are you using HubSpot
Yes,
to
right.
send things out? So it was just really the basics, the things that are more tactical. I think the first round content is really great. First round review, in-depth podcast. I really get a lot from listening to those because to your point, it's the going through the actual story, like the actual tactical things that people did, not just, well, I had to work really hard and then we got our first customer. It's not
Weird.
very helpful. Yeah.
No, you want it, yes, as detailed as possible. Okay. So I would imagine, given the fact that you guys have two sides to the marketplace, this is a completely new category. I would imagine that your first kind of pricing model wasn't your last pricing model, and it probably required a lot of iteration on the way. How did pricing kind of evolve over time in response to refining and making more efficient your sales motion?
It has changed a lot and continues to iterate. One of the one of the dimensions that makes this hard, you noted that this is a new category. And so it was actually very difficult for us to go to someone and say, hey, the budget that you're currently spending over here, we have a better way to spend that budget. We can do that same job for less money because we kind of cross a lot of different budgets. I mentioned it's the sales team at the insurance companies we were going to, but they're not typically paying for data processing software. What they are paying for is commission to people who help them sell more. And we kind of do that, but it's not exactly what we do. And so our early customers on the insurance side were pulling it from a little bit of a discretionary sales budget that was kind of like, we need to get stood up with these distribution channels. So we're going to find it and make a way to work. But then over time, what we had to do is shift our budget, especially as their spend with us increased as they did more volume with us, shift that into more of a software budget or more of a servicing, from an operational budget, tying it to the price, that tying our cost to the reduction in spend that they would have other places. The other thing that we had to kind of contend with is connecting it to the unit of value. So do you charge based on the number of API calls that someone makes? Do you charge based on the number of enrollments that you process? Challenge with each of those is on the API calls, we actually want people calling our APIs constantly because we want them having fresh data. So we didn't want to disincentivize usage. On the enrollment side, that would become very lumpy and hard to predict spend for our
Oh, wow.
customers
Right.
because you don't know exactly when, during open enrollment at the end
How
of
many
the
are we gonna get?
year, you're going to get a lot and then really quiet for other periods of the year. And so we ended up pricing based on the amount of volume that was connected through us. And that led us, so I can explain that more tangibly or more layman's terms. Based on the number of people's insurance that we are managing, that's how we charge. And that means they could make 15 changes in a month or they could make none. You could call the API 100,000 times or you could call it 10 times, but just a very subscription based, almost like a seat, like in Slack, you're paying per seat, per number of people in your company. If you're using our APIs, it's how many people's insurance is Noyo managing for us. And that makes it a lot easier and smoother to scale.
And I would imagine that probably a lot of their business is lined up around those are called lives, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
A lot of their business is like denominated in lives, and so that seems like that probably then somewhat aligns to that as well. So now there's just like a Noyo rake in handling the life cycle of this life, the onboardingness, the updatingness, the offboardingness, et cetera, et cetera. There's just like a few cents a month or whatever it would then pencil out to be that they can then scale. But I presumably you guys got to that one after folks were like, yeah, this is real. This is actually embedded. This is mission critical. It does actually extend all the way across the life cycle of this versus early on. It sounds like you kind of snuck in using almost like marketing funds. It sounds like channel marketing funds, like what I forget what it's called, like not EDI,
Really, it came
MDM.
from their commissions. Yeah, commissions on the insurance company on the commissions, yeah, commission marketing funds that they had to give out. But over time, we really don't want to live there because we want those. We don't want to get in the way. Those insurance companies should be paying the commissions to our clients on the other side, and so we move out of the commission bucket and into the kind of generic software. But you're right; it took us a minute to kind of iterate on that.
But I
Okay,
think it's oftentimes, so one of the things I like to emphasize with folks is be easy to do business with and price in a way, like you noted earlier, price in a way that aligns to value, but sometimes that can mean like sneaking in a certain way where there's an easy way of getting in. In this case, like, yeah, we'll take a flyer on this. And yeah, this is like a promo campaign, right? This is like a marketing campaign. We'll do this. And even though that was maybe not in alignment with like the end state that you desired, the fact that you were able to then transact based on that in order to get in, start proving it out, such that they then say, actually, this is a way better way of running our business here. Okay, great. Versus standing on propriety and saying, hey, actually, this is the way that it really ought to be priced over here, and not being easy to do business with, not making it easy for them to buy.
yeah, and it creates a bit of a challenge for later us, but later us can deal with that challenge once
Later,
we have some
yeah,
happy
later,
customers and some proof points.
yeah, later you, oh man, I have to deal with this champagne problem like later on when
I have
I'm
to
actually,
renegotiate my contract.
yeah, when
That's
I am
fine.
actually alive, as opposed to no, I'm going to stand on, I'm going to stand on principles here, and then proceed not to close anybody, and then my startup goes out of business. Got it. Cool. So I would imagine that as you were iterating that pricing, you're probably also iterating your ICP as well. Maybe you can kind of talk about that at all. Did that change over time as you were kind of doing your founder selling?
It did. We really started. Maybe this is not good advice. Maybe this is not advice you would give to other people. But we really started with enterprise premium product. And so that meant smaller number of customers, longer sales cycle, but we were able to go to market with something 10x better than everything else on the, on the market. And so that was the other kind of just going back to the original thing of why did we start with two and two is because we didn't want to, we could have built an API that would have made sending forms to carriers really, really easy and gone to market on that. But that product wasn't really good enough, for a payroll company to say, yeah, we'll move this really mission critical thing, our responsibility, which is to get people enrolled in insurance. And instead of having our operations team do it and make sure it's done right, we'll outsource it to a vendor who's just going to be creating some forms and emailing over to the insurance
A
companies.
slice of it, yeah.
Just a slice of it and like not that much better than what
Right.
we could do ourselves. Maybe cheaper, but like perhaps a lot riskier. So we didn't want to take that approach. So we took the approach of let's go a little slower at the beginning. Let's get some partners on both sides who will go deep with us on the new way of working, validate that, work through the motions and bring it to life in a way that's really compelling. And then we can go broader from there. So the biggest iterations to our both our ICP and our selling motion and our product and our pricing has been going from big enterprise, six figure to start, high level of customization, high level of white glove approach to actually, can we create things that are less expensive for people to start with, easier
Simpler.
to do
Yeah.
business with, but also easier to try, easier to start. But that doesn't also put Noyo upside down because we're still doing the same level of customization just for a lower price point. So that's been our biggest evolution is how do you actually go from premium to
Yeah, it's like
other
down,
options?
like down, like just like a little bit like down market, maybe down sampled a little bit, or what have you. Yeah, I think oftentimes what you're going to do is you're going to start with the ICP where like the need is the most, it's a combination where the need is the most substantial, and then also their ability to act can be highest. And obviously the large providers probably had the biggest need. It's interesting that, usually those large organizations end up being the ones that are maybe not the most agile in the world. So they kind of fail on that second term of the equation of like, hey, they have like really substantial need, but then they can actually act on it. How were you able? Was it just the fact that you had identified a true believer in these organizations that they were able to then be like an elephant dancing on the head of a pin, or how does that work?
In the insurance space, you can roughly think about the market as the medical insurance providers, medical insurance companies, and then ancillary, which is dental, vision, life insurance, some of those other benefits. Medical's the biggest thing that a company needs to care about. That's the biggest thing an employee cares about. Who do I have my medical insurance with? Does it have my doctor in it? The non-medical, it's a little bit, it's more competitive, actually, I should say. And companies care less about the brand of who their dental insurance comes from or who their life insurance comes from because it's less expensive. It's a little bit more commoditized. And so the insurance companies in that space, it's actually much more competitive. And so for us, it took us a lot longer to get the medical insurance companies to work with us
I see.
than it did for the ancillary carriers, because for them, they were thinking about,
We want to be the
they were,
easiest,
we need to be the easiest to work with, which means we need to have APIs. We need to
fast.
be fast. We need to be compatible with the high growing payroll companies, high growing HR software companies. So that's where we started. And then I was still calling my friends at the medical, my friendlies at the medical carriers, I should say. And we closed our deal. We closed a really wonderful partnership with UnitedHealthcare, which is the biggest medical insurance company, 6 years after I first reached out to. The guy who bought from us is the same guy that I called. It took 6 years. And in that 6 years, it was proving, right? It was keeping updated, proving that we were going to be still around, that we were a trustworthy partner because there's a lot of risk. And so it was really doing things the right way and earning credibility in the space. And that helped a huge amount. And then to your point, that stuff starts to compound because they see that it works. They see that their partner peers or their competitors are using it and they earn some trust. And then you get the chance to show them.
I remember oftentimes there are some linchpin customers in a given market where if you take them down, everybody else indexes off of that one. So I know I'm buddy of mine was a early product leader and did all the founder-led selling at a firm.
Mm.
And I remember him telling me about how Wayfair was so ahead of its time with respect to like pretty much anything that was e-commerce related. But like if you took Wayfair down, then everybody else would be like, oh man, I need that buy now pay later button that's on the Wayfair website. And I would presume that, maybe United Healthcare is something like that, where because it's like the biggest and the baddest and what have you, as soon as they come on board, everyone else, it's like, okay, cool, you are now blessed. And I think that that can be something to, to consider when you're doing your early founder-led selling is like, are there particular pins in the bowling alley that if you knock it down, it takes out a bunch of others as well. Another thing that you kind of noted there was about the importance of relationship-based selling. I think in startups a lot of the time, because we're such commercial creatures, or we're looking at the efficiencies, we're looking at the innovation, we think about things like kind of trying things, giving it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, oh well, move fast, break things, etc. If your go-to-market, or sorry, if the problem that you're tackling is not that, but instead, like literally, we can't break things, so we can't move fast, then that has implications for your selling, right? Your selling behavior. And so that's usually when people hear about relationship-based sales, they think, oh, this person's buying because of the relationship. It's actually not that. It's
Mm.
what they're doing is they're buying because there is the need, right? But over time, they have vetted you and your organization sufficiently that they believe that you can remediate this need, that you are the supply that can fit their demand. They're not buying because you're compelling or whatever, they are buying because they have the problem, but they're selecting you because you have proven yourself as expert, you have proven yourself as sticking around, you have proven yourself through, there's enough of a relationship that it would feel like if you broke that relationship and bailed on them, right? If you defected on them from a game theory standpoint, there would be serious
Yeah.
career implications, right? Like, hey, we kind of have like, compromising material on each other. And in large transactions like that, that's actually part of the transaction, is them knowing that you're fully committed, even outside of the just like commercial relationship. And by commercial relationship, I mean like business to business for this specific thing right here. It's like, hey, I know that I know that Shannon won't screw me, and she'll go to the ends of the earth to do this because of these many meals that we've had together, or the fact that she's I've taken these reference calls for her, she's taken these reference calls for me, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's where a lot of that, and usually that's aligned to, that only shows up when you're talking about $500,000 deals, like, $1 million deals, $2 million deals, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the important thing is to remember that they're not buying because of the relationship. They're like, the relationship is giving them the comfort to
Yeah.
give you a shot.
And it's a trust that goes both ways. I mean, that relationship extends beyond it has to come before the deal is signed, but it also extends beyond it, where I've had customers call me with pretty direct feedback about where our service or our product needed to improve, especially in those early days. But they were calling and telling me that because I think they believed that I would do something about it. Like I would hear it and I would address it because they trusted, to your point, that like I cared about their success. It wasn't just to sign the deal or to close the deal. And so that helped tremendously, because then the more direct the customers are with me, the better the product can get and the faster we can evolve, which is amazing. And I always appreciate candid feedback, positive or negative. And then the other thing is remembering that the customers who were buying from us, they're also putting their neck out on the line, because if we don't do what we say we're going to do, and we're the startup, we're not, you know, they don't have a million case studies. If they pick us and we go, great. But if we go wrong, if it goes wrong, like they're going to look really bad internally, and it's going to make it harder for them to say yes to the next thing. And so we always have to remember as a company, that's our responsibility as well, as like they're taking a shot on us, and it's our job to make sure they feel good about that.
So sometimes the challenge in these high average selling price and high criticality infrastructure sales can be that it requires a lot of building of trust over time, as we kind of talked about. One thing that can accelerate things, and that takes time. One of the things that can accelerate things is identifying the point at which there's a really important need, right? When that pops up, and oftentimes if there's a deadline associated with something. So of course this is known as a compelling event in sales speak. Were you guys able to ever identify a compelling event that you could kind of hitch your wagon to in order to kind of help speed things along?
A compelling event that worked for us at the beginning is still the most compelling event that works for us these days, which is facilitating two parties doing business with each other. So, HR software company wants to build a marketplace of insurance companies that they've vetted that they're going to promote to their customers, and they're picking 10. And we help them when they work with those 10. Part of the deal is we're going to promote you to our growing user base of employers who are going to buy insurance, and you're going to give them good pricing, great products, and it's going to be running on Noyo. So everything is working smoothly and efficiently. That has been that continues to be the most productive way to find that moment.
Yeah. So if you have somebody who's like, hey, we're about to create a bunch of new demand, which supply wants to interact with this? And I would imagine that probably that value proposition for Noyo only has started to show up, and it started showing up later as you got more and more people on both sides. But early on, you probably had to like will that into existence each time.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good one. Aside from that, were there any things in your sales motion that worked like particularly well. Great like tactical unlocks that made this complicated and kind of laborious and probably slow sales motion a little less so.
I would say that in terms of like the actual selling motion and finding the right moment, that kind of facilitating the relationship or the sort of the matchmaking continues to be the most successful. A couple tactical things that have helped a bunch. One is we brought some people into our team who are well trusted, well respected, have a lot of relationships. So that also helped to your point of people buy from people that they trust because they pre-vetted them and they know they're going to do the right thing. So we got our sales team, our solutions team has people on it who are just high caliber, high quality, high trust. And so that helps us get in. That helps us know when the matchmaking moment is there. Sometimes we would find out about it too late. That's one. The other thing is because, what accelerates building relationships is time in person. And it's a very, not everybody lives in San Francisco, which is where I live. And not everybody lives in the same one other city that I could just fly to all the time. So we started hosting some events, which were extremely impactful for curating, cultivating community, helping find those early adopters within different companies and getting them together and building a sense of kind of comfort, trust, community, all that, which was really, really valuable. But it was, looking back on it, when we launched our API in the spring of 2019 is when we went live. And then we were only 10 people when COVID started. So instantly that get on the plane motion, we just kind of delayed and figured
Oh, wow.
events weren't happening, right? So we had to delay a lot of that. And it probably took us longer to break through as the startup than it might have otherwise.
Was I think you had mentioned something about kind of services and how that kind of helped smooth things along and facilitate things.
Yes. Yes. Services. I was afraid of becoming a services company given our competitors are all services companies.
Oh, right.
So we really wanted to make sure we were a software first company. Yeah, you're so right. Advisory services is what we call our kind of consulting practice. And we do this with insurance companies who are trying to move towards an API driven, more modern way of working with the world. And we ended up, the kind of genesis for this was we're selling. How do we help show the customers and help get to the bottom of what's their pain? How do we quantify their pain? And so our solutions team ended up standing up some pretty intense workshops as part of our selling process. And we'll do, started with one workshop, then it became 4 workshops, and it became more structured. And then by the end of it, we realized, hey, this is actually a whole engagement. And so we started selling these as advisory services, engagements for, anywhere between 150 and $400,000 per engagement, depending on the scope of the work. But what it ended up doing was it wasn't just making slides and present. It's just not like my old life. We actually they would say, hey, we've got some APIs we've been experimenting with. And so we would actually, as part of this engagement, our engineering teams would go and work with theirs and run a battery of tests to see how fully featured are your APIs? How ready are they? How easy are they to work with? And then would give them a report. And that was also helping us scope what's the work that we would need to do to work together and put you in our marketplace. And it also gave that through that engagement, it gave them the trust, the confidence in our team, in our expertise, figure out how we work together. And those advisor services, they can either buy them with the software or separately. And if they buy them separately, it converts to a software license as well.
I like it. Yeah. I mean, I think in there's so many scenarios where kind of smoothing the deployment or with consulting. Jen Abel talks about this on Twitter quite a bit, especially at the enterprise level. Starting with services and consulting can be very, very powerful counterintuitively because I mean, one thing is that entrepreneurs have a tendency to have an aversion to that in large part because their investors oftentimes are like, we don't want to be a services company. But being a services company can actually help you validate that the need is actually there with a much more costly delivery model than a pure software delivery model. So that's the first thing. The second thing too is that for whatever reason, large organizations are oftentimes way more open to buying services and consulting than making a commitment to an IT investment. Even if the the services in question is this similarly costly or more costly for whatever reason. It comes out of different budgets, doesn't have to deal with infosec, all those sort of things.
It's not
Um,
recurring
it's not,
necessarily.
yeah, it's not recurring, right? Even though like, I don't know, like software doesn't necessarily recur, right? Like, just be like,
Yes.
we're canceling. But for whatever reason, large organizations, especially in the enterprise, can be like, oh yeah, $100,000 statement of work. Are you kidding me? I just signed off on 4 of those the other week. And so that can be a very clever way of kind of getting into some of these in large organizations that are eager consumers of this in the world. Okay, cool. So that was a good hack that worked for you
Mhm.
guys. What was something that just completely did not work at all?
Oh, we have a long list of those.
We have many, don't we all?
One thing that we tried that didn't work was we had, again, on the insurance side, there were a long list of insurance companies that it wouldn't make sense to pay for the full Noyo treatment. They might have been smaller, they might have been new to the market, they might be trying to crack into a market, and that's why they wanted to have the API partnership.
Yep.
And so we had to figure out, well, how do we with insurance companies, we'll integrate to their systems, but there's a cost to that. And so we needed to they needed to be paying us enough to make that investment worthwhile, or that insurance company needed to be as big as UnitedHealthcare to know that if we made that investment, we were pretty confident we could return it. So we tried for this kind of startup insurance companies, startup benefits providers, giving them APIs that they could integrate with. They've got engineering teams, they could integrate with us, and then they'd be available in our marketplace. And then, any of our HR software, Ben admin partners on the other side could take advantage of that. And the theory works, but in practice it didn't. I think in part because it still required support from us to help them integrate. And then really it was just like there wasn't enough. They were new enough that they didn't have enough volume to get use out of the product. And so
I see.
it just kind of didn't really take off. It might make sense when in a few years when we're at a different scale. But early in our life, 2020, it just didn't quite work the way we hoped.
Yeah, I think that self-serve is oftentimes kind of like the siren song that
Very
that
tempting.
that founders are like, ah, yes, for a variety of reasons. I think you had a more sophisticated reason for approaching it. Usually, the reason is a lot more prosaic, where people are like, man, if I do a self-serve product, I don't have to talk to customers. Sounds lovely. Which of course is
You
doesn't
got to talk to your customers.
does not work, right? Does not work. And yes, but interesting to see that a self-serve model hit against the rocks next to Siren Island for different reasons,
Yes.
for this different reasons this time versus not wanting to talk to customers, which obviously you have zero problem doing whatsoever. Okay, let's talk about customer acquisition. So what, man, yeah, in these high-end kind of stuffy relationship-driven sales, the customer acquisition can be tough because they're not going to respond to an email from Tom, Dick, and Harry, the AI SDR or whatever, right? Generally, they're not. What worked for carrier side acquisition, and then maybe on the ISV side?
Yeah, early days and certainly continues a lot of relationships still, a lot of introductions, a lot of just kind of networking to the right place. But we have built a very effective demand gen engine as well. Tactics that have worked for us, webinars, showing the product, doing live demos, like taking people through the features and the use cases has worked a lot because we do things really differently than what people are used to. So everybody's really interested and they want to learn more, but that also gives people something that they can forward along to their team. It gives them something more tangible that they can hear beyond the, oh, we're fixing data exchange, making it really easy. Because everyone who's familiar with the space will have the same reaction that the people did when I first was calling around, which was, sounds great. Really don't believe it's possible. Like the magic is too magic-y. So if we can demystify it and show people how it works, we've had a lot of success with webinars.
What and then when kind of your early customer acquisition channels tapped out, what What additional channels were useful for you?
So we started turning up a lot of ABM campaigns and really getting smart on which accounts are we trying to get into? How do we find the right people within those accounts? That's been fairly,
The large number of humans that are in those accounts that all 10 of whom or 20 of whom need to see dancing Noyo
that's right.
logos in their LinkedIn ads. Okay, interesting.
That's right. Yeah, that's worked. That's been very effective. And then really kind of productizing the network. So making it really easy for one side to request access to the other side. So it's less about us just calling and saying, hey, you should work with us because there's all these people that want to work with you. We've been able to productize that a little bit better so that there's through the app, through the product, people can request to connect to someone on the other side. And so it's a higher signal of intent for that compelling reason to use, which is, hey, you've got someone. It's like if someone sends you a Venmo request,
I
you don't have
literally,
Venmo yet. It's like, I'd like to
yeah.
deliver $20 to your account. Would you like to accept it? It's not
Mhm.
quite that simple on our side, but
I would imagine.
same kind of motion.
Okay, interesting. So essentially, building demand or building customer acquisition and demand generation into the marketplace model such that the demand can reach out and like tap on the shoulder of the supply. Interesting. Yeah, I feel that happened. Yes, that is a good gambit that oftentimes shows up in marketplaces, like you were saying
Mhm.
with Venmo, but probably less so on the B2B kind of high end marketplace side. And but interesting that it still works. What were kind of ways that you remove friction in your sales motion?
The biggest one was lowering the price, frankly,
Okay.
and lowering the buy-in, making it a smaller decision. Because
Yeah.
as I mentioned, starting with super premium, super high end, super high touch, meant it was an enormous decision, and therefore it was an extremely long sales cycle. And so we had to find ways to say, okay, actually, you can start with a smaller bite, and we'll make the integration easier. We did some product changes to our integration to make that less work for the engineers, move work from the engineer into our product, or just make it easy for the business person on their team to set things up instead of having the engineers have to do it. Finding ways to do kind of ramping deals over a couple of years instead of trying to have the full thing right up front. And as I say them, I'm like, why did it take us so long to figure this out?
I
And
mean, well, because I think it kind of makes sense insofar as, and now that you're describing this, I bet this probably would show up more frequently with organizations that start with like a design partnership mechanism, where if you have
Mhm.
somebody who's like fully committed and they're going to go wall to wall from the beginning because it's like a design partnership or co-designing or what have you, it's almost like that's a little bit of a different product, so to speak, than the person that you're selling the thing that you develop with that design partner to, who's arm's length with you.
Yeah.
And you almost have to think about like, oh, okay, like what is a smaller, can I do this by the slice? Even though like we co-develop, like this guy over here, we co-developed the pizza together, but this guy's like not so sure. And I think just, yeah, thinking about how we can reduce the friction associated with that can oftentimes require like a fresh set of eyes. Yeah. How did you, but unfortunately, you have to be able to do that, or like it has to lend itself to that. So a good example of this would be if you're selling an HRS solution like Workday or what have you, it's unlikely that only one part of the organization is going to be like, yeah, we'll use, yeah, the SDR team, they'll use this HRIS. The rest of the team will continue to use the regular HRIS. It's like, it doesn't happen. You don't have like land and expand deals in HRIS or kind of like substantial workflow. How were you able to kind of partition that such that they could start out trying before going all in, so to speak?
One of the things was one of the important parts in changing it wasn't as simple as just saying, oh, we'll allow people to start with a smaller contract. We actually had to change a lot of our product, to your point, lend itself to that so that it made sense for them to start with something narrower. The
Yep.
way but it also ended up making it easier for our customer because they had less change management to deal with. So maybe the customer has 40 people on their operations team who are used to doing something a certain way. If we would say, hey, instead of trying to put half of your business with us right away, let's just take it smaller. Pick one person from your operations team. What's their workload? And let's just start with theirs. And if they can get this dialed in, then you can start to invite others to use it. But it gives you a way to kind of refine the business processes that the clients are running through in a smaller way that doesn't feel like, oh, if I want to use Noyo, I've got to retrain
Change it
40
all.
people. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. To change it all. And I think for a long time we were asking people to change too much at once.
I think this is the thing that folks need to remember about these large organizations is that it's like the Dune joke. Our plans are measured in centuries. These large organizations, they are not startups, right? They are not. I think Jason Lemkin talks about this a little bit about how you really only know that you have a churn problem. If you sell to the enterprise, you really only know that you have a churn problem when you get not to the first set of renewals, but to the second set of renewals, the second year. Because the first year, it's like 9 months in, it's like, oh, well, we only just finally implemented this thing. So, like, yeah, I guess we're going to renew it. And so the corollary of that
Yeah.
is that thinking about like at Atrium, we have this substantial healthcare customer. They have like, 1,000 sellers on Atrium, and they've been a customer for 3 years. And when they bought originally, this is a 1,000 salesperson organization. It's like fairly substantial for us. It's a public company, older guard. And so they were the fact that you can and you ought to measure customer facing meeting volume for your account executives as just like one kind of leading indicator metrics. There's obviously lots of leading indicator metrics you should pay attention to in your sales organization, but this notion of, hey, whoa, you can pay attention to how many customer facing meetings your reps are having a week, and you can do that by consuming the information off their calendar. This is like crazy and magical. If we're able to get that done by the end of the first year, this will be a smashing success, right? And like our smaller customers, it's like that's done during the pilot. Sorry, like
Right. That's done during integration.
that's
Yeah.
done during like we're done, right? They're like no. Like if we can get 1,000 like 1,000 reps and the managers associated therewith, right? So 200 odd managers actually paying attention to the fact that their reps should be having 5 to 10 customer facing meetings per week. And if we can improve that by 10%, right, across our 1,000 people, and everybody just having one more meeting a week, then this will be a wild smashing success, which is a different. And if you think about it, if you multiply out the economics in that regard, you've got 1,000 sales reps and you're getting everybody to do 10% more meetings or what have you. This is not like a 50% improvement or what have you, but the fact that you're doing it across 1,000 people, that starts to add up very substantially. And that's what these practitioners and operators, they think in terms of the joke I like to say is it's not like turning a battleship, but instead getting like 1,000 little kayaks to turn.
Yeah.
And but so like that's what they're thinking about. And so if you can put yourself in their mind and say, hey, and then show them, importantly, show them that that's how they think. And this is the project plan associated with it.
To
And that's going
deliver
to be,
that.
and it's going to be way more credible where they're like, oh, okay, cool. This person recognizes that from a change management standpoint, I am buying them for this outcome in 24 months. And they are presenting credibly to me by acknowledging the fact that like we're probably only going to get to this state in 24 months and then showing me this stepwise process about crawl, walking, and running. Okay, cool. I am more bullish on this person than I was
Can I ask
previously.
for you all, when you get a deal like that, it's almost different, right? Because you're like, oh, this customer is now bigger. You probably look at that and think, we could really get that done during, we could implement this thing so you can see the meeting measurement. Like it's not going to take 2 years. We could do that much faster. Is it counterintuitive, or does it require a little bit of a mindset shift for your team internally of like, no, it's okay that what seems like a really small improvement is huge for them. It's okay that that's
Yeah,
not
that
all they
that's
want to
that
do with us, but like that's the thing to start
exactly.
with.
Like that's we had to so we as a seller, you have to recognize that. And then the related version of that would be, oh, I can sell less of them up front, which is the thing that you're talking about. definitely have to change your customer successes organization's mindset there. And then also you have to think about it from the standpoint of one of the things SaaS is software as a service, but ultimately what we're doing is we're delivering a service that is levered up and like cost reduced through software. And so when you're talking with these large enterprise organizations, the customer success thing is actually what they're buying. And it just happens to be like the delivery of the outcome, which oftentimes is facilitated and organized by customer success or what have you, is the thing that they're buying. Now, it just happens to be dramatically less costly because it's delivered via software or what have you. But putting your CS team or your AE team in the mindset of this is a 12-month process right here, and then moreover, the thing that they're buying, they're actually not buying the software. They're buying the fact that you, as a customer success person or implementation person, is going to have 20 meetings across all those 200 sales managers or what have you, where you're selling them or educating them on this notion of measuring your customer facing meeting volume, or like managing by metric or what have you. It's that's the SVP of RevOps and the CRO. They're like, that's what I'm buying. I'm buying that. Like, oh, the software, yeah, the software is cute and it obviously helps me get to that thing, but literally what I'm doing is I'm buying you guys, installing your software into my 200 managers or what have you. Like, they're buying the outcome.
That's
um,
such a great point. It's not just the software, it's they're giving you the responsibility to make it work, to actually to get the adoption done, which is going to require more than just the configuration. It requires the change management.
Yeah, and with this can be very important when you're dealing with non-technical organizations and like upsells and deployments and what have you, is the phrase that I use internally is you are the emissary, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of like, Game of Thrones, like, I have the signet ring, I show up, here's the stamp. It's like, hi everyone, I am the emissary of the CRO and the SVP of RevOps.
Mm.
And we are here today because you guys have this critical initiative that the CEO and the CRO and the board have talked about. And so this is what is happening in your organization. And so I'm here today on behalf of them. See, here's the signet ring to help you with this thing right here. Oh, by the way, here's the personal selfish reasons why this is going to be beneficial to you. Like, it's going to make you look better. It's going to make you, more money. It's going to make you're going to get promoted, et cetera, et cetera. But don't forget that I am here as the emissary of these folks as well, because otherwise, if you're not facilitating that change management, they're not going to get the outcome that they actually signed up for. Hey, I thought you were buying the software. No, I was buying you installing the software in my 200 sales managers. And your CSMs ran around asking the sales managers what they wanted to do with the software versus showing up and saying, hey, we're doing this with this software in order to drive this out. And obviously, like, the economic model has to pencil appropriately for your CSM implementation model as compared to the cost of the licensing cost, et cetera, et cetera. But that's ultimately what they're buying for, especially in these large organizations. Small organizations, I don't know, dev tools where like engineer is buying and they're like, yeah, like, I know how to use Datadog, go away, right? Like, I don't want to talk with you. Like, Delve, the SOC 2 compliant, like AI SOC 2 compliant or AI driven SOC 2 compliance. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, here's your $15,000 and like, hit the button and it's done. And it's like, all right, cool. See you in 9 months. That's fine, right? And like that those organizations are oftentimes buying the product, and that because they can actually self-actualize the outcome. Whereas in these enterprise organizations, they're buying the outcome, or both organizations are buying the outcome, but these guys would need way more TLC in order to drive the actual outcome. Yes. I mean, this shows up when you're selling to big stodgy organizations and high ASPs, but the juice ends up being worth the squeeze if you're priced appropriately.
Yes.
So, what did your early sales stack look like, and how did that kind of change over time?
Early sales stack, Salesforce was the first thing that we installed. And we That was a mistake for us. A little heavy-handed, and we were kind of leaning on like what people were used to and what the sort of default was. And as I, again, I said I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about the sales stack, and so I wasn't really calibrated on even just to like ask the questions or to push back on well, hey, yeah, it's the way things do it, but like, what about these new things? So we've migrated over to HubSpot for our full CRM, and that's been great for us, like wonderful for so many reasons. And our marketing team, our sales team, everybody uses the same. That was a big change for us. What else went into our sales stack? Slide making, decks,
Huh.
that type of machine. What else we use? Oh, we use Apollo for finding leads and contacts. We like that a lot. We use Vector to see who's looking at our website.
Oh, wonderful.
That's great. That's like really fun. Just get a little
Yeah.
Slack message. Someone looked at this page, and then you reach out to them and they're like, oh, I was thinking about you.
That
Can we
is
talk?
weird. Oh,
Yeah.
shocking. Yeah, the
Great.
de-anonymization. Yeah, I do love that. Those guys have great branding. The little ghost mascots. Okay. Okay, so one of the things that can end up being pretty fraught in these high ASP sales motions is like it takes a long time to close these deals. And so even though it's very important for a founder to be doing the founder-led selling, you can, you can't wait to close 10 $100,000 deals or like $300,000 deals or what have you, because you'd be in year 3 of the company and you wouldn't have enough traction to raise incremental funding or kind of like float the business. So sometimes what that can mean is having to make sales hires earlier with like a lower number of closed customers during that founder-led selling period. How many customers did you end up closing before you hired kind of like quote unquote professional sales?
Fewer than 10, but bigger, to your point, bigger,
Yeah.
more complicated. And then we brought on, yeah, more professional sellers. And I would say like hiring the sellers is challenging for a lot of reasons, because people who are excellent at enterprise sales and know how to run a really tight process, they maybe don't have any experience in our domain, and therefore they have no credibility with our customers, and no, like, it's a really high ramp to get to that consultative selling that is what we found to be very effective. So we've 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 always kind of looked at that balance. We've leaned toward, on the seller side, people with industry experience, even if they're a little bit less like, I'm a salesperson. And frankly, like, the people we sell to don't want to be run like a enterprise deal, but finding that balance is our, I would say, our continual challenge.
Is that being a more common thing in the kind of like the stodgier, kind of a more like older line markets? Is it's related to the relationship sale thing, where having someone who knows the proper shibboleths to say, so that people are like, yes, you obviously speak Ben admin.
Yes.
You are one of us. I will be more open to sharing things with you. Or okay, cool, you've said the right things. Maybe I will actually give you the time of day. Maybe I will think, maybe I will consider the thing that you're talking about here. Oftentimes what that can mean is people talk about this as relates to like the Rolodex, so to speak. And it's not about the fact that they know who the humans are in these organizations, because we have these prospecting databases like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or ZoomInfo or Apollo or what have you. But the big delta here is we can know who the head of operations or the head of whatever at UnitedHealthcare or Aetna or Kaiser is or what have you. Just because we email them, they're not gonna be responsive to that. That will be different when you're identifying the CEO of some like seed stage company or Series A startup and then hitting them up. Like, they may evaluate that message on its merits, right? That outreach on its merits through LinkedIn or through email or what have you. But as we discussed previously, in order to filter for the folks who they can trust and are lower risk, relationships will come to bear there. And so that can mean the Rolodex that you're buying is not actually the Rolodex. It's like, oh, Bob, or oh, Susan, I have had a drink with them at most important industry conference for the last 20 years together, and they would never screw me. And they would
Yeah.
never work for a company that's like fly by night and like, full of malarkey, right? Okay, I will listen to them.
And there's that trust. There's the who do we talk to your point is it's on the like spectrum of importance and what we look for, what we filter for when we're bringing people onto the team is, yeah, do you know do you have a Rolodex that's like helpful, but more important is, can you speak their language in a credible way? Like you were saying, it's can they understand our product to translate it into the customer's needs? Because we are solving things in a different way than people are used to. So we've met plenty of people who are smart, well connected, but they're
And
not
yet,
able to grasp they can't do the consultative selling to guide people towards the new thing as effectively. So the people we bring on to our team, they are the people who are grilling me during our interviews of like,
very curious and
yeah, like, I don't believe, like, prove it. Like, how does your thing work? And I'm like, yeah, that's the question because
great.
by the end of the interview, they're like, okay, I'm
Okay.
sold. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
sell that.
I'm sold. And then you're like, cool. So, you want to re-articulate that to me? And they're like, blah, 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 and like,
Yes,
and like redeploy the pitch at you. And you're like, okay,
in a much
cool.
more effective way because they could connect it back to those needs,
Right.
which is great. And then the third thing is, of course, like, that's most important, more important than the Rolodex, more important than can they run a sale?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I think that's everything I wanted to cover here today. If you had kind of like a takeaway to offer to kind of Shannon 36 months ago, 48 months ago, which is who the audience is, who's going to be listening to this, who are probably the person who's listening to this has a high average selling price product that they're maybe trying to sell into large, stodgy, old line customers. What would be your kind of like pithy takeaway or kind of recommendation, parting shot for them?
I've got two. One is, if you're like me and had a bit of a fear of sales, just push yourself, make the call. Don't be afraid of sounding stupid because if you tend to be very well prepared, then when you make the call before you're ready, you'll still be well prepared. So just do that. And then the second thing is, with that high selling price, that highly enterprise motion, I I wish that we had pushed ourselves to lower it earlier, and forcing all the changes that come with it to the product, to the implementation motion, to the sort of like, well, we can't sell for this price because the upfront work is so high that this is the price that has to make sense. And so the answer isn't find ways to justify that price only. The answer is also, okay, let's work backwards from what needs to be true to find an entry point that's smaller so that you can sell to more people more quickly. Because our land and expand motion has always worked extremely well. So we just need to land. If we can land at smaller points, then you can land more. And then we know our expand motion
We know
works.
it's going to expand. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that that's another really good thing that large enterprise organizations can leverage is if you know your stuff is sticky, right? If you know your stuff works. And of course, if you're middleware, usually it's pretty sticky, right? The gents from Tonic, the fake data company, were on the other day, and they kind of learned a similar lesson where, once their synthetic data like production system was in the CI/CD for at least for one kind of
Mhm.
component of things, people were just like over the moon with it, and then they could expand very easily into other kind of projects there. So, partitioning down in an as long as it's like economically viable can be a very effective way to do things. Wonderful. Well, Shannon, this was fantastic. I appreciate it. Thank you for being our first extraordinarily high ASP sale guest and our first two-sided marketplace guest. I appreciate it very much. And everyone, thank you for joining us. You can find Shannon online and Noyo if you happen to be someone who is starting a company that has benefits administration as a component of what it is that you do, maybe an AI driven HRIS or payroll provider or what have you, then obviously Noyo is the number one place for you to go check out automating your Ben admin to talking to all those providers. So thank you very much, Shannon.
Thank you, Pete.
Okay, bye.